Subakir. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar hosted by Technology Committee of the Bahrain Chamber. I'm Ravi Jasundara, a member of the Technology Committee, who will be your host for today. So we welcome all of you who is joining this webinar. We have a very relevant and exciting topic for discussion today, cybersecurity risks to SMEs and tips on how to address this risk. We are going to reiterate on the term tips to address and that's what you are on. If you could put all of your on mute, please. Rukaya, maybe you can mute the others. Thank you. Right. So
Ravi, you're on mute.
I think we lost you,
sorry,
Mr. Ravi.
sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
So my apologies. So I welcome you all to the webinar hosted by the Technology Committee of the Bahrain Chamber. I'm Ravi Jasundara, a member of the Technology Committee, who will be your host for today. We have a very relevant topic for discussion today, which is cybersecurity risks to SMEs and tips to address these risks. So I would like to reiterate on the word tips. That's what that we will be sharing with you. And we have a very eminent panel of speakers today who are experts in cybersecurity and digital transformation. We have Mr. Abu Bakr Arshad from BNet. We have Hani Nofal from GBM, and we have Mr. Erdem Erdogan from Microsoft. So all of them have been doing a lot of research and in their own organizations leading the technology and the cybersecurity transformations within the organization. So the agenda for today is we start with a short introduction, and then we have the three presentations from the gentlemen, which will be followed by a panel discussion where we have questions that we want you to post to the panel as well. So we want to make it more interactive as we go along, and then we will have we'll end the session after that. So just want to share a few thoughts before we start. While the headline grabbing cybersecurity attacks involve large companies, the cyber criminals don't discriminate between size. So if you would have seen, a lot of the cyber attacks that has happened recently have started from smaller organizations, and those have propagated to larger organizations. So any organization that neglects the cybersecurity is taking a significant risk, and sometimes this can impact the very survival of the organization as well. And we have seen a number of examples in the past. And also, as organizations become more interconnected and the customers, the supply chain, and all the partners become one ecosystem, the need for having good cybersecurity controls is very important, and especially for SMEs. So what has happened in the past is that while larger organizations with a lot of budgets on cybersecurity, they spend time and protect their systems, smaller organizations don't give that sufficient attention to their cybersecurity. And that's what we are trying to do through these awareness sessions that we are having from the Bahrain Chamber of Commerce and also some of the other organizations within the industry. Now, we know that 99% of the organizations in the kingdom are small and medium-sized organizations. Hence, we are having this type of sessions to educate the small and medium-sized organizations. So we want you to have your questions ready to the panel, and then we will can get answers to those questions, whatever the questions you may have. So without further ado, I would like to, and I would also like to tell that there is live translation that is available. And if you click on the bottom of your screen, you can get to the translation. And also this is broadcasted on YouTube as well on the Bahrain Chamber channel. So what I would like to do now is that to introduce our first speaker for the day. He's Abu Bakr Arshad. He's the Director of Cybersecurity at BNet. Abu Bakr has been a cybersecurity strategist for over 15 years. He has extensive experience in defining privacy, security strategy development, etc. And he's been the one of the advisors for the Telecommunications Regulatory Authority previously, where he's set up the cybersecurity policy and strategy for the Kingdom of Bahrain. Currently, he is the Director of Cybersecurity at BNet, and in that role, he takes a very active involvement in enabling and helping organizations within the Kingdom of Bahrain, and also ensuring that the various protocols and the requirements for security is being implemented. He's also a reputed speaker. I've heard him many a times speaking, and he has a lot of knowledge on the new concepts related to security, etc. So Abu Bakr is going to set the stage and talk about some of the risks and impacts on small to medium-sized organizations. So Abu Bakr, over to you.
Right. Thank you very much, Ravi, and good morning, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm pleased to be part of this seminar. I continue to hear good things about this audience and the society in general. So it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to speak at this seminar. I will just quickly share my screen and go in presentation mode. Ravi, if you could please confirm that you can see my screen, please.
Yeah, we can see your screen, Abu Bakr.
Right. Okay. Great. So it's an interesting topic, right, Salva, because it's gained relevance quite a fair bit in the past couple of years. I've been working for about 15 years. The first 10 years, we've tried our best to create the necessary level of awareness among organizations and executives in terms of the criticality of securing the digital space. I think in the past couple of years, though, the question largely has moved from being what is cybersecurity to what can we do to protect our organizations. And I think the general realization that cybersecurity is an important component of any organization and an extremely important part of even our society is, I think that realization has definitely come about. What is very important, though, is to have the right strategy and the right execution in order to make sure that the cyber initiatives are effective and successful. But I will actually start with something that is in fact non-cyber, and it's basically a story from the history where the first transcontinental railroad between the eastern US rail network and the Pacific coast was built in about 1869, and that reduced the time to travel between both locations from about 6 months to under 4 days. And the cost of travel reduced from 1,000, which is about $20,000 in today's time, by about 85%. And what it really did was it enabled a communication plane for the entire United States of America and gave the Americans a new concept of reality and transformed their lives and their economies in a manner that was not seen prior to that. The digital ecosystem today gives us a very similar opportunity. And just to go back into the same example, if someone were to say, well, while we get the advantage of being able to move from the eastern US to the Pacific coast in less than 4 days now, and there are a whole lot of economic benefits, but then you take away the security and reliability of that communication plane, and you would see that a lot of people would much rather go back to the 6 months travel and pay extra rather than risk their lives. And cyber and the digital transformation is actually very similar, because in order for us to enable rapid digital transformation that is so essential for organizations, including SMEs, it is important to secure these communication environments and this digital ecosystem, because the trust in this digital ecosystem is one-to-one tied with enabling the adoption and making best use of this digital prosperity that is presented to us as an opportunity. And think of it as a brake in a car, because your first inclination after hearing the word brake means that it helps you slow down the car, but it in fact is the one reason that allows you to move the car in the maximum permissible velocity. And similarly, cybersecurity enables you to adopt digitization and make best use of the digital benefits in today's world. So Ravi just introduced myself, so I'm not going to go over that. But really talking about what has really changed in the recent past in terms of cybersecurity, there are actually 4 key trends that have influenced our digital ecosystem and organizations. The first one is geopolitics. Critical organizations, large, small organizations, they're increasingly becoming targets of cyber attacks from nation states that are motivated by political gain. If one country has a problem with another country, one of the first ways to express their displeasure would be to try and impact the economy of their target country. And the best way to do that is to affect the critical organizations and try and damage the critical infrastructure that results in damage to the economy and express and show of strength to the adversary and to the target. The second key trend is basically around Internet of Things, which means the impact of cyber incident has gone beyond just impacting a system or a server. It affects our HVAC, it affects our electrical systems, it affects the energy management system. So it goes beyond the cyber world or the digital world and moves into the physical environment and has much larger implications on our daily lives than it used to back in the day. The third trend is around the cloud, and it's an incredible situation because as an SME, yes.
Can I just, I think some of the people don't hear you very well. If you can just maybe perhaps move closer towards your mic. Yeah.
Is it any better now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, my apologies. So what I was saying was cloud being the third big trend here, where being an SME, you could be hosting your digital systems in a cloud, but then that same digital space might be shared by a much larger organization that could be a target of an adversary. And by effect, if that organization gets compromised through a technique that is more supply chain related, then you as an organization are also exposed to the same level of threat. And therefore, you're not only worried about your threat ecosystem, it's also about the shared ecosystem that you're part of. And that is not to say that I do not encourage cloud. I really think it's a great enabler, but to truly understand the risks is the best way to make maximum use of the opportunity that the cloud presents. And finally, pandemic. Many people would think that we're pretty much at the tail end of the pandemic, and I really hope so too. But the implications of pandemic have been profound, and the way it has changed the way we work, the way we exercise business, and the way we interact socially has moved to a point where it is actually a permanent change, and it is very much reflected by the interaction we're having at this point in time, for instance. Now, so what's really happened? It's in summary, as an organization, on one hand, you're faced with with adversaries with unlimited resources in nation states, and then you also have script kiddies and people who are attacking organizations just for fun, and they could also bring down an organization. So organizations are actually in a very strange sort of a middle spot where it's very hard to protect against the cyber attacks. And it's really important for us to truly understand the risks to be able to mitigate them adequately. Very quickly, the 3 major attacks that we've seen in this year alone has been one around the SolarWinds that had a major implication on more than 20,000 organizations, including the US government, FireEye, and Microsoft. We also saw in May how a ransomware attack affected 45% of the supply, oil supply in the East Coast. And in September, we saw a Cineverse attack where the organization was compromised for about 5 years and impacted more than 120 plus telecom operators, making it the largest known breach in the telecom sector across the world. Now, cyber impact of this pandemic, this is just to illustrate that the cyber attacks across the board due to the pandemic have increased. The cost of cybersecurity has increased, the breaches have increased in number, and about 45%, 47% in fact, of individuals continue to fall for phishing scams while working at home. So the impact of the pandemic from a cybersecurity perspective has also been significant. Now, one other thing that I want to talk about is how the attacks over a period of time have become easier to execute, and the cost of executing these attacks have gone consistently down. I mean, you could be going to a dark web and be able to launch a DDoS attack on a massive organization for under $1,000, whereas in order to protect against such attacks, the kind of infrastructure required and the complexity involved in protecting against these attacks have increased significantly. So as an organization, it becomes a very difficult act because you would have to spend more to protect yourself, whereas the attacker would be able to launch a devastating attack on your organization for maybe a fraction of a cost. And we say in cybersecurity that as an organization, you have to be right all the time, whereas the attackers just need to be right one time. So why does it matter? You know, if you're an executive, if you were an important person in your organization, why does it really matter for you that there is a breach, and why would you want to try and protect against it? Well, the cost impact of the data breach is about 4.24 million, which is the highest in 17 years. Much of it has to do with direct impacts of a data breach, but a lot of it has to do with the hidden impact, such as the reputation, customer trust, and so on and so forth. A lot of the digital businesses, in fact, if they're SMEs, are just unable to recover from the cost of a data breach or a security incident. In terms of the valuation of the company, there's about a 7.4% direct drop in the share value of the company as a result of a data breach. We saw that with Equifax, we saw that with Yahoo, with its valuation. But what we saw, which was much more profound in my opinion, was the Sony executives that deeply apologized for security breach. And that's the picture that you see at the bottom of the screen, where it is just incredible. You know, the senior most leadership of Sony comes out and apologizes because they believe they're holding the data of their customers and there's a responsibility attached to it. So it goes well beyond that. And it is something that then requires the CEOs to be personally accountable as well. You know, your digital journey and the trust in your digital journey is so important to your business, and it would push you as your executives, as the executives, to be more responsible and more careful. Now, the attackers, the most likely targets of these attackers are actually humans. If we were to pick all types of cyber incidents in the past 2 to 3 years, we'd see that 95% of them involved cyber attacks where human error was involved. And that's why as an attacker, I'd be very keen on targeting the human aspect of it, because it can be a weak link, and the strength of your security is only as strong as the weakest link. And among these people, though, who are those that I'm most likely to attack? Well, the attackers would actually look at something that you see privileged cell and say, well, I'd want to go after the privileged employees because they have access to great systems, senior executives because they've got a decision-making aspect, power to it, and then they're high-profile individuals because those high-profile individuals are usually ones that not just are in the leadership position of one organization, but probably more than those. And if you were to do a sum total of this, the people that are usually most targeted are board members, executives, CEOs, because that has an implication not on just that organization, but it goes well beyond that. Therefore, it is no surprise that 1 in 3 phishing attacks are actually aimed towards the executives of the organization. So what is it that the attackers want to do while targeting the executives? I'll actually rattle through in the interest of time. They'd actually look after your social media to see what are your interests, your location, your personal data, use that information to launch spear phishing attacks, smishing, which is fraudulent SMS, have actually gone increased in frequency and impact, malicious mobile applications. Be careful of what you're downloading because that would have an impact. Fake websites that steal your data is also going to be one of the key attack vectors. 4 very simple things that we keep saying, but that is still one of the biggest reasons. These 4, the mistakes along these 4 lines are one of the most important reasons of why organizations get breached. It's about exercising care while sharing information on social media account. Make sure you have multi-factor authentication on your corporate and social accounts. Before entering sensitive information in a website, always look for a security padlock, as you see on the screen, and take special care while allowing permissions for your mobile apps. As a final thing, very quickly, as a board member or as an executive of the organization, World Economic Forum has a couple of recommendations. I've tried to simplify them into 6 very key points, which is 1, integrate cybersecurity as a strategic business enabler, hardwire cyber risk considerations into your operational and strategic decision making. Make sure it's an essential part of your strategy. Establish the maximum risk that you're willing to take as an organization, because if you have that in place, then you'd be able to understand how much further you want to go or how much effort you want to make in order to make sure that this cybersecurity is part of your active decision making. And similarly, embedding cybersecurity into your organization structure, because then you have people who are responsible and who have the necessary skill and resources to take those decisions. Most importantly, I think cybersecurity expertise has to be part of your board governance and your executive governance. You need people who understand cyber risk as much as they would understand, say, for example, financial or operational risk. And finally, it is as executives, it's really important for you organizations as SMEs or large organizations to share information, to threat intel data, because the more you're able to share information with each other, the more you're able to learn and be able to build stronger defenses against the cyber threats. Now, there's a lot more that I'd like to say, but in the end, it is really important as an organization, not just to understand that cybersecurity is a big, the cyber threats are a big risk to your organization. You have to realize that by reversing the flow and transforming cyber threats into a secure digital environment, you'll be able to bring trust back into your digital offerings. And digital trust is one-to-one tied with your digital progress and your economic progress and your business progress in months and years to come. With that, I'd like to end my presentation. Happy to answer any questions with regards to this topic or anything related to cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you, Abu Bakr, for those insights. I think you touched upon a number of items. I've noted down that the word trust that you used a multiple number of times, and also the responsibility for the business owners, especially in small and medium-sized organizations, to keep charge of the customers' data, the employees' data, and also their partners' data. And because now you are interconnected within an organization to multiple organizations. So as small and medium-sized business owners and senior executives, there is a major responsibility that needs to be taken by each party within the board as well as in the senior management. So I think you touched upon a number of points. So if you have any questions for Abu Bakr, please hold on to them. We'll have the next two presentations that is going on, and Abu Bakr will be there towards the end to answer any questions. So thank you, Abu Bakr, once again. All right. So we move on to the second speaker, who is Hani Nofal. He's the Vice President of Digital Infrastructure Solutions at GBM. He's joining from Dubai from the GBM offices. Hani has over 25 years experience in the industry. He's been working with GBM for a number of years, but prior to that, he held senior executive positions at Cisco, Compaq, 3Com, and a number of larger organizations. And for GBM, he leads the digital transformation and infrastructure solutions activities, both in the Gulf as well as in Pakistan. And he's developed a number of ecosystems and other strategies for various large organizations in the region. So Hani is going to take some of the research that GBM has been working on and touch upon that, but also again he's going to share some tips, as we promised at the very beginning, which organization can use as well. So Hani, over to you. Please take over.
All right. I hope you can see my screen. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Sabah al khair. It's thank you, Rabi. It's really my pleasure to be here with all of you and to share, as you mentioned, some of the experiences that we have gathered, especially over the past 18 or 24 months, that have been very different than anything that we have seen before. If you allow me just for a second to fix my screen here, and we will be going. All right, so over the next 15 minutes or so, I would like to share with you what we have learned and what we have experienced talking to enterprises from different levels across the region, including Bahrain. And I think the first thing that we can all get out of the way and we agree on is the last 2 years have been nothing that we have probably seen in our lifetime. And I maybe hope that we don't see anything like that in our future as well. We've seen a lot of challenges, a lot of change, not only at the global economy and the regional economy level, but a lot of technological disruptions have come to really change the way we work, the way we educate and learn, and the way we do healthcare, the way we bank, the way we live, basically. That has caused many organizations, small and large, to rapidly adopt and accelerate digital agendas. And it changed the way we interact with clients and we interact internally with our own employees as well. So if we look further at the workplace and some of the changes that have happened to our workplace, that has moved to become distributed almost all of a sudden, almost overnight. And yeah, I agree with a statement that has been said in the previous presentation. I don't think many of these changes, including this, will ever come back. Not in the workplace environment, but probably in the blended learning environment that we see and many other hybrid environments that the pandemic has created. But it's not only about the past and what we have seen. It's about us as organizations, be it SME or be it large enterprise, to think about your ability in the future to attract the future talent. The future talent that is not only the millennials, but most importantly, the new Gen Z that is already spent the past 2 years learning remotely. But these guys have been born digital with their expectations and the way they interact. And our ability as organizations to attract them to our workplace and attract them to our organizations is going to be extremely crucial going forward. So we need to start thinking about that and thinking about what is the workplace environment that we're going to create that will ensure productivity, collaboration, but ensure that we are attracting the best talent into our organizations. Now, I'm sure we have all started to hear the digital first approach over the past few months. And this is maybe applies to our region, I would think, more than any other region, because our region is young in general, and we are tech savvies naturally. So we've always used technology to compete. We've always used technology to be ahead of other nations and regions around us. And this has helped us really well over the past couple of years. And you look at, some of the transformation that has been taking place in government with a lot of services that have been implemented to improve the citizen and the residents services, and creating a very strong digital platform to serve and to respond. You look at banking, and it's become almost, and Bahrain is big on its banking infrastructure. It's becoming almost, natural to deal with a digital only financial institution or bank. And we've seen a lot of enhancements on the online channels and mobile channels over the past couple of years. Healthcare has seen the most transformation, because healthcare and education are two sectors that have been traditionally conservative in terms of applying technology, especially things like remote services that have become almost sort of normal to deliver to patients. But blended learning and education that I have just mentioned, and I think many of these things are here to stay. Personally, I had, for the second year in a row, an experience where I attended the parent-teacher conference for the third or fourth time now over a Zoom link like this, which is much more time efficient. You still have the same information. And I did all my son's 8 or 9 classes in about 1 hour and 1.5 hours versus wasting half a day. So many of these things are here to stay. And of course, you look at retail, and who from us did not really use some of these channels and did not start to interact, even if you had reservations before, because that was probably the only option. So many of these things will be here to stay. So I think it's become almost apparent that we have seen a huge influx of accelerated digital initiatives and transformation in our region. And many of these things were to respond to what we have seen, to make us more competitive, to continue to keep the lights on. And you look at a survey from IDC that includes the Gulf, and Bahrain is one of the regions, and it says 58% of organizations really accelerated digital transformation initiatives. They have moved against what we thought initially will be, I'm going to cut budgets, I'm going to sit tight, I'm going to wait. You had no choice. You really had to move forward with your digital initiatives, with your transformation initiatives, in order to stay in business, to keep competing, keep serving your clients, and keep working with your employees. Now, from a technological perspective, we can summarize this in 3 key shifts or 3 key domains. Number 1, everyone has fast-tracked their cloud adoption, no doubt about that. If you are an SME or enterprise, you would have done something in the past, but you would have considered even more, because maybe you didn't have the time, you didn't have the budget to do it otherwise. And this has become the norm. As a matter of fact, according to our studies, more than 60% of organizations in the Gulf accelerated cloud investment just over the past 12 months or so. Cloud is going to give us the ability to be more agile and to have application and data scaling up within the platform very, very quickly. And this was absolutely required. The second thing is about distributed collaboration. And this is not just about secure remote access for our employees to work from home. It goes much beyond that. It's our ability to embed the collaboration and the cloud applications to continue to do work. It's our ability to go, to allow our employees to interact with the applications and with the core of our business wherever they are. But it's more about also reaching out to our clients, to our supply chain, to our subcontractors, to ensure that we continue to do things the way we used to when we were all under one roof. And the last one is the explosion that we have seen in applications, mobile applications, but the remodernization of all the legacy applications that we have been building over the years that we did not think that we need to modernize to be cloud enabled, to be securely delivered on any platform outside our organization's premises. And this is going to be a huge shift for the years to come. What is your strategy? How are you planning to do it? Are you going fully cloud native, or are you going to have to remodernize from within, or is it a blended approach from both? This technological shift made a lot of organizations think, what is really my strategy and how I'm going to move forward? But these shifts and everything that I have seen cannot be really delivered and achieved without really having security in the center stage of this. This is not something that we all can agree, I'm sure, can come after the fact. This is something that has to be blended in each and every area that we have discussed, from the initial stages all the way within your organization strategy from A to Z. So from our discussions with the clients that we work with in Bahrain and across the region, we learned that they said, okay, well, we do understand and realize that things have changed and it's probably not going to be the same. But that has made them think about how I'm going to reshuffle my priorities, how I'm going to find this fine balance between, everything that we have seen to keep my organization going, but also balance my budgets and balance my approach, but most importantly, time to market, to continue to serve our clients, to continue to serve our customers. And I'm not going to go through all these areas. You will find them on our report, which is available on our website. But, I think I'm going to just leave you with a couple of tips that you need to bear in mind as you move ahead with some of these key sort of like 7 or 8 areas that we learned. The first one is the cloud is an opportunity, but it is a dual joint opportunity between you and the cloud service provider. Cloud has been a big discussion in Bahrain with the arrival of some of the large hyperscalers in town, and then I think there is more to come, but it's all about your understanding of the service level agreement that your organization has with the service provider, and understanding that the fact that you have your application delivered or your data stored in the cloud does not mean that you can sit back and rely on your service provider. You need to understand what is your role and what are the barriers between you and the service provider. And this links to the identity. When you had all your employees working and accessing your corporate resources from one single location under one roof, you only needed to secure the perimeter. You only needed to secure the perimeter of your organization so that everyone who can get in and out is checked, and your data within your organization is secured. But that is not the case anymore. With the hybrid world that we live, distributed workforce and the hybrid cloud environment, it's highly likely that your data and applications are so distributed, and add on top of it your workforce, customers, supply chain, and contractors and subcontractors, that tagging the identity of your users has become an extremely important. And we're seeing more and more organizations thinking about how I'm going to manage this, because I need to ensure that the same user who might be working on 3 or 4 applications, taking data from right to left, is got an identity that is tracked, authorized, and approved by me, and that I understand how my data and where my data is at any point of time. So this sheds the light on the data privacy and the risk of data privacy as well. So there are so many things here that we need to look into and that we need to understand. And we don't have, unfortunately, the luxury of time sometimes when it comes to just responding to some of these threats. So your ability to understand how I'm going to create a platform that will focus on the results, that will allow me to continue as an SME to do my business that I want to do in any industry that I'm in, but I still at the same time build a platform, potentially maybe with an outsourced service provider that will allow me to automate, that will allow me to have a orchestration and automation that allow me to cut down on the time between detecting a threat and responding to the threat. So that becomes extremely crucial for you to minimize the damage, but most importantly, to ensure that you don't lose valuable time, credibility, and you don't impact your business. So as a result of our recent studies, these were the 5 key domains that organizations told us that they want to focus on going forward: data security, cloud security, managing my identity and the access to and from my network so that I know the behavior and I can detect the abnormal behavior when it occurs. Network security and the drive to a principle that says, I trust no one. There is zero trust in anyone. I will assume that everything is a threat until and unless I am sure that it's not. And we talked about the securing application delivery, whether you are building from scratch in a digital native way or remodernizing applications, legacy applications in a cloud environment. All these things, whether you are a large enterprise or a small enterprise, become important to you. And your ability to deliver on these things for your business might vary from doing it in-house to completely outsourcing it to a hybrid approach from both. But we need to tackle these things and we need to make sure that we understand our responsibilities in each and every one of them. So it's really about building this roadmap, rebuilding this understanding that these are the key areas that I'm going to take forward, talking to experts that will allow you to build and prioritize, because no two organizations might be the same. What is the holistic approach that I want to take going forward that will allow me to say, well, this is a top priority for my business. This is maybe a less priority area for my business, but this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to simplify my cloud security, ensuring that I understand my joint responsibility with my cloud service provider. This is what I'm going to do to modernize my network, be it wired, be it wireless, be it mobile, 5G into the mix as well. This is how I'm going to simplify it and implement all the latest approaches to ensure I'm secured. And I extend this, real time to my distributed workforce and to my clients. And this is what I'm going to do about my applications, whether I'm going to go application native in the cloud or whether I'm going to have to shift and lift some of my legacy applications. This is the approach that I'm going to take. Identity and access, you need to think about that. You need to think about starting from the simple things of the, building the basic identity, privilege, access management, and all the way to, high hybrid cloud identity solutions. But this is something that you cannot no more ignore from the edge devices that you have all the way to the core, including your hybrid cloud environments. So with that, I know we will have a panel discussion and hopefully we'll get some interactions going, but I hope that I managed over the past 15 minutes or so to summarize some of the learning that we have seen and how things have changed dramatically over the past 18 or 24 months. And I think in Bahrain, we have the platform. We have very robust platform when it comes to the legalization of things like, the private data laws that, was launched in 2019, and, some of the regulations that we have seen from the central bank and many other organizations that continue to really evolve from a regulatory perspective that will probably depending on your industry and depending on your segment that you are in, you will need to comply with in a way or another. And all these things become really crucial for you to do that. So I want to thank Ravi and Bahrain Chamber again for the invite, and I will see you again in about 15 or 20 minutes for our panel discussion. Thank you. Ravi, over to you.
Thank you, Hani. Thank you for those insights. And I think you touched upon a number of key points, such as the privacy as well as the compliance requirements. And as business owners and senior management, these are increasingly important items, specifically related to the privacy data that has come into effect in Bahrain over the last couple of years, and the need to address those. But also, what I also took from your presentation was that it's imperative for any organization now to go into digitalization and absorb the digitalization, especially due to the pandemic, and taking security as a very important factor in the digitalization is, I think, important factor that especially the business owners need to take care of, because if you keep that security side outside that, there might be a major risk of the organization being threatened due to a cyber attack. So I think that's a good point. So we move on to our third speaker from Microsoft. So all of you are using Microsoft products. You have been using, interacting with Microsoft. So we thought that Microsoft presentation from Microsoft will help to clear out some of the aspects that they are focusing on. And Erdem Erdogan is the senior solutions architect for cybersecurity and compliance for the Middle East region at Microsoft. So Erdem has worked extensively on privacy and cybersecurity areas within Microsoft over a number of years. He's worked with compliance teams and as well as small and medium-sized organizations to other larger organizations, and has extensive experience in the security architecture and other related components. So Erdem is going to share some thoughts on the concept of zero trust as well as other tips from Microsoft. So I would, without further ado, hand over to Erdem. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ravi, and thanks everyone for joining us today. So in my part, I'm going to talk about the guiding principle of zero trust and how to adopt a zero trust model of work to really be able to deal with this complexity. We have mentioned so far that the main roadmap or agenda is the digital transformation, and there are different challenges actually out there. And to maintain this complexity, we need some guiding principles. And in cybersecurity, if we were to pick one main guiding principle, top principle, I believe it could be the zero trust architecture and adopting a zero trust environment in our companies. So with that, when we look at the current situation, while a fundamental transformation in security has been well underway for a while now, the global pandemic put all of us on an accelerated path and brought many of the toughest challenges right to the surface. Our traditional perimeter-based network and security models just couldn't adapt, and for many, the existing infrastructure is not ready for such a large shift to remote work. So when we look at the picture, we see that many organizations now need to support permanent hybrid work models where secure access outside the network is critical. As employees transition to a new work model, they're bringing more devices to the increasing number of endpoint diversity in organizations. And on top of that, with all this, the digital estate continues to grow as well, making visibility and threat detection and response across multiple platforms and cloud is very challenging. Security teams need more visibility and struggle with threat detection and response across their multiple clouds and platforms. This diversity, along with siloed solutions, makes rolling out new security controls much more difficult and inconsistent sometimes. And bad actors know this, and they are exploiting these vulnerabilities. They're targeting our environment. And finally, for many organizations, there is still work to be done in optimizing network and also to prevent lateral movements and cope with these kind of attacks in general. So while the challenges we are all facing continue to evolve, so does the threat landscape itself. When we look at the numbers in 2020, we see that our Threat Intelligence Center reported a 230% increase in password spray attacks. On average, 78 gigabytes of data is uploaded monthly to risky apps by average enterprise. And in the month of August 2020, Microsoft detected 5 billion attacker-driven sign-ins. And finally, a third of all the attacks, when we look at the numbers, the statistics, in an enterprise account, they involve phishing in general. So we have some assumptions, and all the assumptions we built our models, our old models on, have changed already. So let's explore and let's see what kind of mind shift, what kind of changes we need to adopt in the coming future, and starting today, of course. So users are employees is no longer a valid assumption. We should think rather employees, partners, customers, and even bots as part of our assets in the environment. Corporate managed devices cannot actually be the scope anymore. We should consider bringing personal devices, bring your own devices, scenarios, and of course, IoT devices, all sorts of IoT devices. And instead of on-premises applications, we should look at explosion of cloud applications. And we see this trend in any organization, in almost all the organizations, that there is an increase, significant increase in terms of cloud applications used in an enterprise. And instead of monolithic applications, we should be looking at composite applications and public RESTful APIs. So again, there is interconnections, there's lots of connections between the different applications and different layers, and it's also adding to the existing complexity. And instead of corporate network and firewall, we have mentioned the perimeter-based security is no longer applicable, no longer valid. We should look at expanding the perimeters. And of course, this today has become the whole internet because of all the remote work, all the devices, and with the IoT, of course, in addition to that. And instead of local packet tracking and looking at logs, again, as a traditional approach, we should also look at, start looking at explosion of signals coming from all the different assets and endpoints. And again, the number is increasing, so the complexity is also increasing. So with this kind of mind shifts, we are living in a new reality. And those old assumptions will not keep us secure in the new world. We can no longer believe everything behind the corporate firewall is safe. We cannot keep operating under the old principles. We need new principles. So what can be these new principles? And actually, these will represent the zero trust model of working and design in our enterprise environments. So first, we need to verify explicitly. Always authenticate and authorize based on all available data points, including user identity, location, device health, service, or workload, data classification, and of course, we should be aware of the anomalies. So on top of that, it's not only enough to verify explicitly, but we should also use least privileged access or adapt to this kind of model. It means limiting user access with just in time and just enough access, applying these principles in our environments, and to protect both data and productivity. Because as we increase the bar for the security, it means maybe hardening the end user experience in general, like challenging the user with multi-factor authentication or similar applications. But at the same time, we should also keep in mind that the productivity of our employees and users and customers really matters. So we should be aware of this as well. And last but not least, we should always assume breach. So it means minimizing blast radius for breaches and employing security strategy to prevent lateral movement. So how can we apply all this? And again, these actually represent the right model of adapting to a zero trust architecture. So how does Zero Trust employ our new principles? Every access request is strongly authenticated, authorized within policy constraints, and inspected for anomalies before granting access. Everything from the user's identity to the application's hosting environment is used to verify the request and prevent breach. And to limit the impact of potential breaches, we apply segmentation policies, employ the principle of least privileged access, and use analytics to help detect and respond quickly. But the essence of Zero Trust remains simple. Security models which assume safety based on network location are inadequate. So if we accept the facts, then we can start building the road to a fully Zero Trust architecture in our environments, in our enterprise environments. So a Zero Trust approach should extend throughout the entire digital estate, and it should also serve as an integrated security philosophy and end-to-end strategy. It's very important to cover the whole attack surface. I mean, there are different attack vectors, and again, the complexity and the scale of our environment, especially with the remote work reality, is growing. So it's very important to apply all these principles end to end in our environment. When we say end to end, what do we mean? And here we can see the list. It starts with identities. Identities, whether they represent people, services, or IoT devices, define the Zero Trust control plane. When an identity attempts to access a resource, we need to verify that identity with strong authentication ensures access, and it's going to be compliant, and it's going to be controllable for our teams, security teams. The next is endpoints. Once an identity has been granted access to resource, data can flow to a variety of different devices, from IoT devices to smartphones to bring your own device scenarios, or to a partner-managed device in some cases. Of course, we have also on-premises devices and workloads in place. This diversity creates a massive attack surface area, as I mentioned, and it requires to monitor and reinforce device health and compliance for secure access. So looking at all the endpoints and having this control also matters. On top of that, we have our applications. Applications and APIs in general provide interface by which data is consumed in general. They may be legacy on-premises applications, or they may be lift and shift to cloud workloads. And I know that majority of our customers, and in general, all companies, small and large, are already in a journey of cloud transformation and digital transformation. So it will also include SaaS applications, software as a service applications. So controls and technologies should be applied to discover shadow IT principles, ensuring appropriate in-application permissions. And even in the session, when a user is connected to a service on an application, we should also make sure that the session is under control and everything is manageable. And of course, this will be based on real-time analytics. It should be based on real-time analytics, and it should be part of monitoring as well, to identify abnormal behavior in terms of user actions and whatever is happening in that session in general. And the next, we should also look at data. On top of all this, we should also be looking closely at the data. And ultimately, security teams are focused on protecting data in general when we look at how we operate today. Where possible, data should remain safe even if it leaves the device or application, infrastructure, and network that the organization has under control. Because data flows everywhere. And again, especially with the remote work reality, it's now also spreading across personal devices and devices that the company may not be really managing. So data should be classified, labeled, and encrypted. And access to restricted data should be based on different attributes, again, of the user, the device, and the other criteria should also be considered. Looking at the next is, of course, our infrastructure. Then we look at the infrastructure. It may be on-premises servers, cloud-based servers and virtual machines. It can be containers. It can be many different things today. Again, it's very diverse. But it represents in general a critical threat vector, and access for version, configuration, and just enough access, just-in-time access kind of principles should be applied to ensure infrastructure security. And networks, of course, carrying all these other assets and connecting all of them together. All data is ultimately accessed over network infrastructure. Networking controls can provide critical in-pipe controls to enhance visibility and help prevent attackers from moving laterally across our networks. So networks should be segmented, and real-time threat protection, end-to-end encryption, and monitoring should also be applied to really protect the whole digital estate in general. So these are the 6 foundational elements that will serve as a source of the signal, as I mentioned, to collect all the signals, and to represent a control plane for enforcement and a critical resource to defend. So with this, when we look at the reality of today, again, not really going into deep technical methodologies and applications, but rather to look at the holistic picture and to identify which assets are critical and which guiding principles can help us to reduce this complexity and overall improve our security posture. It is the zero trust principle, as I said. And today's reality, again, is remote work. The tools, the applications we use are very diverse. And the way we work today, or the way we are trying to stay productive by diversifying our working environments, our relationships with our own employees and partners are all changing. So this new reality also needs new principles. And again, as we listed, it's verifying explicitly, using least privileged access, and assuming breach. So with these 3 in mind, we can, in general, we can apply a zero trust methodology in our environment. And when we look at the securing our digital transformation journey, if we look at the top of minds, in general, I can say, it starts with modernizing identities and endpoint management. But this journey also includes securing the hybrid workforce, transforming employee experiences, and as well, it includes customizing secure access for all different user types. So let's look at the modernizing identity and endpoints. So why should we modernize our identity endpoint management? When we look at the numbers again, 81% of business leaders state that they feel pressure to lower security costs. And we see this in every customer and every organization, small and large. The cost is actually a main theme when it comes to really investing in overall security posture. So to improve security, we can prevent attacks on your on-premises infrastructure. We can increase the IT efficiency overall, reducing maintenance costs and operational overheads. And of course, we should be able to accelerate digital transformation in general to enable business agility and efficient allocation of resources. So it is, in general, a way of applying optimization across the whole organization to really enable digital transformation and to be able to sustain that. On top of that, we have mentioned securing the hybrid workforce. And again, if you ask why we should secure the hybrid workforce, when we look at the numbers again very briefly, we see that 68% of business leaders feel their cybersecurity risks are increasing. So we know this as a fact, and we should be able to provide remote access to all our employees and partners to enable remote workers to securely access the applications they need from anywhere, from any device. We should also be able to secure devices and applications, enabling bring your own device scenario and to be able to unify management across devices and different applications. And on top of that, we should be able to protect corporate resources to empower IT to apply controls and protect endpoints without getting in the way of the productivity. Because at the end of the day, we want to keep our employees, our teams secure, but at the same time productive. Moving next, we should look at transforming employee experiences. And again, why we should transform the employee experience? The numbers tell 49 million of remote workers report that it takes days and sometimes even weeks to get issues fixed. And to really improve the end user experience and overall agility of the company, of an organization, we should look at improving productivity by providing employees quick access and consistent sign-in experiences to all applications. We should be looking at reducing IT friction, empowering employees to be more productive by enabling them to resolve IT help desk issues. And we should be able to foster collaboration to be able to remove silos between employees and partners to improve the overall collaboration in our organizations. And last, again, but not least, we should be able to customize secure access for all the different user types. And when we say all the different user types, we mean our own employees as well as our partners and our customers. So we should be able to improve collaboration by simplifying collaboration between information workers and frontline workers, because we know that the day-to-day experiences of information workers and frontline workers are different, but the operations should be optimized by connecting these different user profiles and to provide them a seamless way to connect and interact throughout the working day. And we should be able to protect your brand, or we should be able to protect our company brand in general, because poor customer experiences put your brand and reputation at risk at the end of the day. This is another risk that we need to deal with. And again, we should simplify overall user experiences by providing streamlined workflows that empowers all our different user types at the same time. So this is to summarize all these guiding principles and methods that we can apply to secure our organizations with zero trust. We should always look at identities and endpoints to apply the company confidentiality policies to control, and we should have the visibility, analytics, and automation to be able to scale all these applications throughout the entire company, entire organization. And at the end of the day, we should be able to protect our data, applications, infrastructure, and network on all the different sorts of workloads attached to these. And with that, what should be the top of minds for us? It should start with modernizing identity and endpoints. It should also include securing the hybrid workforce, as we mentioned. And of course, it should help the digital transformation of our company to really transform employee experiences. And with all, we should also look at how to identify the right solutions, the right vendors, to bring us these solutions and the technology that can be applied in our organization. And of course, it's also going to be a very important decision for us. And with that, I want to thank you all for listening. And if you're interested in this concept, and if you're also interested in how Microsoft is bringing zero trust into the picture, you can check this link for more detailed information. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for that insights on that. Specifically, you talked about the hybrid workforce, and I believe with the pandemic and transformation that has been happening in the last few months or years, I would say the hybrid workforce is a very important part of the organization and catering to the security needs of those workforce. So we will start with a short Q&A with the panelists, and Abu Bakr, I believe you are there already. So what I would like to do is that to start off with a few questions, and if the audience has any questions, please raise your hand, and or you can type it in the chat window. We can take that up as well. Please use any of the channels that we have for. I would like to start with a quick question to Abu Bakr, starting with. We have talked about the staff and the hybrid workforce, and how do you see that the awareness that we need to create on with the staff of the organization playing an important part in the cybersecurity promotion and compliance requirements, Abu Bakr?
Right, thank you, Ravi. Very pertinent question. So, as I mentioned during my presentation, employees are such an important part of your overall security ecosystem, and they're unfortunately they're also ones that would be most targeted by attackers in every way possible. And with more and more use of technology that the employees have at the moment, and especially working from home, the risks only tend to increase. And so there are different layers of how we could address the problem. One of the most important aspects is to try and convert what we call the weakest link in security, to transform that into the strongest link. And that can happen where employees are made aware of their responsibility with regards to cybersecurity. They understand that they're equally responsible to participate in and act in a responsible manner towards addressing the cyber risks. It's not just a responsibility of a technical department. It goes across the organization, and that awareness and that sense of responsibility we've seen with experience has gone a long way in making or enabling the employees to act in a more responsible manner. In the past 6 to 8 months, for example, we've seen a shift. We worked heavily to transform the culture here in a couple of organizations, and what we've seen is the employees have been able to identify those very complex and advanced spear phishing attacks and report it back to the security department. And when they're able to do that, they're able to then even help the machines do their job and be able to help identify some of the most complex attacks. So when employees begin to see these results and realize that they have a part to play in the larger security responsibility and ecosystem, there is a culture shift, and that culture shift then reflects in your ability to protect against those attacks that are targeted towards the employees.
Right. Thank you, Abu Bakr, for that. My next question is to Hani. Hani, we have seen in the past that intruders gaining access to networks through various devices interconnected to the main corporate network. Even we've seen a case of a fish tank being used as an entry point to the organizations. So what should business owners consider when they open their network or give access to various other partners? Any thoughts on some guidance to the business owners in the call today?
Yeah, thanks, Ravi. Look, I think we need always to realize and remember that intruders, hackers, criminals always use technology, and they will always continue to use technology from the very old days until now, whatever that technology is, to achieve their goals. Obviously, if you add to that it's become the cyber threats have become more organized and more sophisticated and funded, you need to think also that they are probably equally able to have access to as advanced and sophisticated technology as us. So we really need to take this into consideration. So couple of things, as I mentioned, I will reiterate here, for especially if you are in the SME segment, because if you are a large enterprise, large government entity, bank, etc., maybe the means and the ability for you to invest and to have the skills and the resources could be different. But as an SME, you need to think about the approach in a more outcome-based approach. So that's why we see a lot of SMBs saying, look, I'm not in this business. My business is in, healthcare, financial, services. I'm a lawyer. I want someone to take care of me, be it the identity that I have for my 50, 100, 150 users that include my employees and suppliers and subcontractors, etc. But also the identity of my customers that are coming to access my resources, my applications, because they want to transact with me in a way or another. So the approach and the notion of having almost 90% of the organizations out there going for this outcome-based approach, whereby they go after a service provider to say, I want you to come and do this service for me. I want you to monitor my brand and tell me, if there is any social engineering or social engineering threat that targets my organization or my brand. Someone is trying to phish my, domain or email or using it for, malicious activities, etc. I want you also to, do my managed detection and response. So, I'm going to give you access. Yes, you have to respect the data sovereignty and, all the data leakage guidelines and what have you, be it in the country or in my segment in particular. And technologically, this can be done with no issues, but you have to be responsible. And I want you to ensure that you have such a service that is highly automated. So basically, anything that can be done using a machine, must be done in a machine so that you are able to detect, respond to the threats within my organization, and then inform me, once a week, once a month, once a quarter. And if there is only anything that I need to do to take an action around a specific user or a specific machine that I might have in my environment or a specific access that I want to know about it, because I want to be busy doing my own business and I want to be busy minding my own revenue stream that is core to me. So this shift has started and it's been accelerated over the past couple of years. And I think we're going to see a lot more in the next few years to come. By the way, it does not only just cover SMEs, but it will also cover very large enterprises that have, said, I'm going to adopt this because I want to free resources, to free skills, and to free budgets to go do something else.
Thank you, Hani. I just have one question to them, and then we'll open it to the audience. A number of organizations are going into the cloud, and this has accelerated over the last few months and years. Any tips that you have from Microsoft specifically on those organizations who are shifting to the cloud?
Thank you, Ravi. So yeah, we actually see that many organizations are in the journey already moving to the cloud. And we also see a good number of organizations starting their journey right from the cloud. I think we can say we have two groups. For the ones who have already invested heavily for their classical IT infrastructure so far, and maybe beginning their journey with the cloud, I would say there has to be a culture change. First of all, I think all the speakers already underlined the fact, the importance that the way we look at certain things should be different in the new reality, in this new model. And second, choosing the right cloud provider, I think, is also very important because we also mentioned several times the importance of trust. And the importance of knowing how the responsibility is shared between the service provider and the customer. Because the cloud and the new service model also redefined the shared responsibility model, I mean, you can say. And it never means that moving to a cloud provider means, from a customer's point of view, they are outsourcing all the responsibility to the service provider. It's not the case. But I think what really matters is to really understand what the service provider is providing as a means of control, manageability, reporting, all that information and control, and how to really make use of all of these features. And what parts of responsibility and control is on the service provider side, and what else is still on the customer's end. So with these right understandings and the ability to really leverage the best of the cloud service provider, I think really matters for the companies.
Thank you, Adam. Right. So we open the questions to the floor, and any member in the audience, if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. And I see Dr. Osama has raised your hand. Please, Dr. Osama.
Yes, good morning, Ravi. Thank you for organizing this webinar, and thank you to all the speakers today. Now, if I have one question, if we focus on SMEs in Bahrain, and most SMEs in Bahrain are actually small and micro, they are not medium. So for those SMEs to really understand and summarize what we're talking about today, they want to have cybersecurity. So are you telling them that if they move to the cloud, if they move their email services to the cloud, if they move their storage to the cloud, if they move their applications, ERP and CRM to the cloud, are they cyber secure 80% and they need to do a little bit more? Or are they secure 90%? Or are they 99.99% secure? Because let's say the big players on the cloud already have, let's say, some sort of zero trust protocols and two-way authentication, and they will secure the data, the apps, infrastructure. You remove the network requirement. So if each of you just tell me whether it's 80, 90, or 99%, so that our SMEs can say, yes, I will move to the cloud and then I will sleep and rest in a good way, or they need to do more. Thank you.
Yeah. Hani, would you like to go first?
Yeah, with pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Osama. Look, I will just be brief, and I will just say that, firstly, we need to understand that the cloud security is a shared responsibility. So it is not your hyperscalers or cloud service provider only, it's you and him as an organization. And in any chain like this, you are as secure as the weakest link. And for sure, you would imagine if you go with a reputable service provider that they have already invested in a very robust platform, although every now and then we see issues here and there, and they are not for sure immune 100%, but they will tell you that my network is available, 999 and what have you, but that doesn't matter, and nobody can give any figure because it depends on how secure are you, because it's a combination of this joint responsibility. So understanding as an SME your responsibility when it comes to the identity, to your data, to your application, and all the other elements related to your devices, endpoints, etc., is what will determine eventually where are you on this benchmark. Now, there are for sure tools that would tell you, this is how secure you are. There are services that will come and do proper testing and will say, here are the vulnerabilities that are available. Here is what we would recommend you to do. And you might elect to do it yourself, or you might say, I'm going to outsource it, as I mentioned earlier, to someone who's going to come. And I will be as secure as my SLA with that service provider. I'm not talking about your cloud service provider. I'm talking about a managed security service provider that will come and say, I'm going to guarantee that you are secure up to this level of this SLA. So really, it's joint, and it's as good as both of you. You cannot have one or the other.
Thank you, Hani. Any thoughts, Abu Bakr, very quickly on that?
Right, thank you, Ravi, and thank you, Dr. Sama, for that question. I think just building on from what Hani just said, eventually, regardless of who you, where you host your services or your information, the ultimate risk remains with the organization itself, right? And they continue to own that risk. And even when we go to a managed security service provider, what we're doing is we're outsourcing the hands and legs. What we're not doing, however, is that we're not transferring the overall risk, because you spoke about zero trust, right? And while we continue to talk about layers of zero trust, we also have to fully realize that by going to the cloud and probably having the infrastructure or technology adoption, we are basing our trust on someone. Right. And we've seen repeatedly in the past year where vulnerabilities on the cloud service providers and even the supply chain attacks have resulted in breaches across several organizations. So what I'm trying to say is, while the cloud does offer a lot of robust infrastructure and platform related security, what is most important is for an organization to understand its risk appetite, risk tolerance, and understand that the information and the use of that information still resides with the organization, just as the identity and use of identity. So I can secure the lock for you, for example, but then who do you as an organization authorize to open and close that lock is totally within your remit. So business decision making has a huge influence on the technology aspect of it, which in this case is being provided by the cloud, or say, for example, as Hani said, managed security services provider. Because what can make things even worse is if you hand it over to a managed security service provider who gives you a false sense of security that you don't have to do anything at your end. That will never be the case for any organization. So while cloud and the managed security service providers are enablers and supporters, the ultimate risk and the conduct of that business remains with the SME itself. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Abu Bakr. Very quickly, Erdem, if you have to add anything onto that.
Yeah, Ravi, thank you. So actually, I fully agree with Hani and Abu Bakr. Just to add on it, I think it really matters. It's not really important to me, actually, whether it is 80% secure, 90 or 99%, but it really matters what you are putting into that 1%. Let's assume it's 99% secure. What is within that 1% that's left? I think that defines at the end of the day what you're going to be faced with. And it is again tied back to the shared responsibility model. Maybe one specific example, also being an architect and being a practitioner in the field, I see if you have some privileged users, let's say admin users or managers with the rights to make certain changes in your configurations. If there's an identity theft, and if one of your privileged users' identities is stolen, and if it's only one user in your organization that's not really protected, it can become a disaster, while you're secured maybe on the other hand for the rest 99% of the whole organization and all the assets. So again, I think it is really important to have the visibility and the tools, as I said earlier, that are available to you as a customer, that are provided to you by your managed service provider or cloud provider. If you are able to realize the gaps and what fixes or improvements need to be done continuously, then I think this is the right approach. And it is the responsibility of the customer at the end of the day. While the responsibility of showing those gaps, alerting and notifying is the responsibility of the service provider, fixing them, acting on it is the responsibility of the customer.
Thank you, Erdem. We have Marcus who has raised a hand. Marcus, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Listen, guys, this has been really informative. You've given us some really good objectives to work towards, so I thank you for that. I've got just kind of a question, just kind of from a practical logistical side. Like you mentioned, a lot of organizations have made a lot of progress in a very quick time through this kind of accelerated digitalization. And that has caused the kind of blind spots that you're talking about. So we might need to go back and address some of these issues. Where do you start? If you don't have the kind of budget and the funds to go to a cybersecurity service provider, what's the kind of first port of call? Where do you just start to implement these changes and make progress towards these objectives that you outlined?
Abu Bakr, would you like to take that first? Maybe any thoughts that you have on that?
Yes, Ravi, thank you. That's actually a really good question, Marcus. And in the interest of time, I'll try and rattle through things. See, what you just said is a challenge for every small and medium organization or the micro businesses that we have, right? The lack of budgets, but then the cyber risk continues. What is most important, however, is to understand two aspects. One, what is your current situation, right? To be able to have the necessary testing or assurance or the assessment that gives you an idea how far you are and what are your major risks, right? When you're short on resources, the first thing that you would tend to do is first understand your situation, understand your overall vulnerabilities and risks, and then prioritize them in line with making sure that you're able to address and you're able to use your resources properly and mitigate those risks in accordance with your risk appetite, because nothing is 100% at the end of the day, right? But what we could do is make it harder for the cyber attackers to breach your networks and your environment. And what cloud and SaaS-based services have done is they've reduced the barrier of entry. Right, they've reduced the barrier of carrying out these tests and assurance and assessments. And my recommendation is just to understand your risk threat environment first, and then prioritize the actions. I could obviously say, well, let's do a cybersecurity strategy and let's try and implement a set of layers of security and all of that stuff, which is good to see when you're working forwards. When you're looking backwards and you're trying to address your biggest risks and trying to prevent the immediate risks your organizations, in my opinion, the best way to start is really assessing your environment and be able to then prioritize and address and implement controls in an iterative manner to try and increase your security over a period of time, rather than trying to boil the ocean and try and do everything in one go, because that would not only be too expensive, you might never be able to execute it very successfully as well. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Abu Bakr. We have another, Hani, would you like to add anything onto that if you have, or otherwise we can go to the next question?
No, I think there are I want to say there are very specific methodologies that one can follow to understand, as Abu Bakr said, where you are today, where you want to be. And it varies from one organization, from one business, from one industry to another. But, then you build a roadmap, and that will help you to prioritize where you want to be and, start to build different budget streams associated with that. So that can be implemented as well.
Right. Thank you. Right. We have a question from Pawan Kumar. Would you like to ask your question, Pawan? You're on mute, Pawan.
Yep. Sorry for that, gentlemen. So good morning, everyone. As we are discussing about implementation and development of our infrastructure and our security systems. So even while Abu Bakr was sharing the slide and he explained in details about the types of attacks happened throughout 2021. So I wanted to know, irrespective, we are having so much of controls in place, still we are having attacks happening again back and forth. So can we discuss more about the incident management or the disaster recovery or the best practices?
Abu Bakr, would you like to answer that?
Yes, Ravi, thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin, for your question. You're absolutely right. Regardless of what we end up doing as an organization, there's always an opportunity for an attacker to breach those organizations. Just 2 days ago, FBI said that they were breached through an email attack or whatever, which resulted in a massive breach of their user accounts, for example. And it was just remarkable because you thought that they would have already covered for that attack vector. It was a well-known attack vector, by the way. So what we're moving towards fastly in a very rapid manner is one assumed breach scenario, where you assume that as an organization you've been breached, and try and address and look for IUC's indicators that would give you some more information about the threat actors and be able to be on a hunt, so to speak, of threats within your network. That's one area. Threat-informed defense is another aspect, and it's a big topic, but very briefly, it's about looking at it from the adversary's point of view and try and simulate those attack vectors within your environment to see how secure you are. And then one of the most important aspects, and you rightly pointed about, is what do you do when you breached, right? Because once you've breached, then every half an hour, every hour that you lose is going to cause an impact on your organization, right? There is a statistic that says if you're able to stop a breach within 200 days versus after 200 days, the difference could be over $1 million, right? So having the right processes in place to make sure your incident response is rapid. And that's one area I always tell organizations where you need help. You need experts and boots on the ground if you are breached. So you have to have an ecosystem of incident response providers, because see, incident responders are not inexpensive. You'd have to pay a lot, but then over the year, there's only going to be so many times you're going to need that service, right? So that's one area where you need a managed service provider to help you with specialists if you were to be breached, and then to enable you to recover. And in terms of data breaches, always remember you're able to change people's email IDs and some of the other information, but what you cannot change is their blood group type. If you're a healthcare, you cannot change their CPR ID, for example. It's very important to realize that even in terms of data, what is your most important data that belongs to your customers or employees, and try and protect it properly. And if you were to be breached, which organization should you reach out to? What communication mechanisms? And we talk about a 5S methodology that helps you to rapidly respond, and what tools you have at your disposal. We increasingly also talk about incident readiness that helps reduce the incident response time by over 30% and could have a massive impact in terms of your effectiveness on towards the incident response. So a whole lot of things that we could talk about. It's a huge topic. I've tried to cover as many things as I could have, but I'm happy to have an offline discussion around this as well.
Thank you, Abu Bakr. Dr. Osama, you have a hand raised. Would you like to ask any question quickly?
Thank you, Ravi. Yes, a final question from me. Again, I go to the small and micro and even medium companies. Many of those companies do not have the expertise or the resources to understand their current situation and risk, and then to prioritize and then to address. So if I'm a small or a small company, where do I go? Who to approach? Who will provide me a service that will allow me to understand and prioritize and address in a reasonable cost, reasonable compared to a small and a micro or a medium, rather than on a large organization? I mean, in Bahrain, where would I go? I myself, if I'm asking for my own company, where would I go? Maybe somebody can help address that, so that the listeners from the SMEs can think about their situation and try to approach someone. Because if we think it's going to cost heaven and earth, we're going to take the risk and say, okay, I'm going to stay as I am. No need to look at this issue and take a risk. Please. Thank you.
Who would like to address that? Maybe Hani?
Yeah, we've been told no marketing. Otherwise, I would have said approach GBM. No, but I think Dr. Osama, thanks again for this. I think clearly we did talk about managed service providers, managed detection and response, and I think those kind of new services are starting to hit the market, especially the managed detection and response, which is the new form of a managed SOC or a managed security service provider. But the one thing I would like to add to what my colleagues discussed earlier is the ability to identify and filter the threat feeds that we get is extremely important. Because today, for you as an organization to rely, whether you are with a managed service provider or whether you are doing it in-house, you rely a lot on a lot of threat feeds that you subscribe to. And there are, freewares that you can get from online that will tell you that this is a malicious activity or a bad IP that you have to block, etc., etc. So those type of vulnerabilities are in millions and millions of incidents, and the threat that you continue to get needs to be rationalized, needs to be filtered, and you can no longer rely on one or two threat feeds. I mean, an average organization, maybe on the enterprise, I'm sorry if I don't have a statistic for SMEs, could have 7 or 8 different threat feeds. Some of them could go up to 12. So your ability really to rationalize this is what, and there are technologies that will allow you to do that, as I said, be it in-house or even with a managed service provider, will allow you to identify what's bad and what's not bad and what is critical. And that is extremely crucial for you in order even to start this journey, because you need to have this prioritized. And the one thing is this whole notion of machine learning and artificial intelligence, when it comes to security, you have been attacked using these technologies anyway. So the ability of these supercomputers that use this to try to reach the vulnerability within your environment or within the service provider within your environment has become extremely powerful, that you need to really leverage the platforms that, as I said earlier, whatever can be done using the machine must be done using the machine. We have skill shortage in this industry, no doubt about that. And these skills, especially the good ones, are not cheap. And that's why we need to rely on the machine learning and the artificial intelligence in order to improve our security postures. So I hope that I have added something to your inquiry.
Erdem, would you like to add to that any, because we are running short of time. I know Abu Bakr has to go for another presentation as well. So I just want to wrap up with that. Anything that you would like to add, Erdem?
Yeah, thank you. I'll very quickly share my view. Actually, if I were in your position, I will answer this way. With limited budgets, I want to, actually in my presentation, I tried to cover that. I want to secure all my company, all my digital estate end to end. And maybe I can give one common example, which is email infrastructure. Any company has it, small and large. You can either host and manage your own email servers, take responsibility, full responsibility. You can outsource it by hosting it somewhere else and maybe outsourcing the management of it. Or the third option is going to the cloud, again here, to really get this as a service, fully covered, fully managed within SLA. And I would try to choose a cloud provider, which also gives me one flexibility in terms of financing. I mean, if I have 10 customers, I want to pay for 10 customers. If I have 10,000 customers, then I want to multiply the unit price with 10,000. It's that simple. So from a financing perspective, cost perspective, this is possible with cloud provider. And the second is the cloud provider is already securing its own infrastructure and service and taking all necessary measures to really secure it. And again, I will tie it back to my message earlier. I would look at what built-in security is available as part of the service. And on top of that, what is provided to me as the customer to have the visibility to see really transparently what the service provider is doing for me as part of the service. And for the rest, what tools and methods are available to me, again, provided by the provider, service provider, so that I can also make my changes and manage when necessary, take action. So with that perspective, I would actually go for a cloud provider.
Thank you, Erdem. I think that is a good answer to the budget-conscious SMEs, and specifically going into the cloud and doing that in a very conscious and manner, and looking at all the threats and looking at the various options that are available. And I know there are a number of organizations who are providing those services. So it's a matter of selecting that what is appropriate for the business use and the size of the business as well. And also very important is that to look at your partner systems and look how those other organizations such as your suppliers, your customers, and other partners are using that also is very important. So thank you very much for that. So we come to the end of the session. I know we've been spending quite a bit of time and sharing thoughts. If you would like to get in touch with any of the speakers, please drop a note to the chamber and on the chat as well. We can share some of the information. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Bahrain Chamber events team and the PR team, also Rukaya, who has been coordinating this, and also to our speakers, Abu Bakr, Hani, and them for taking time. I know they've done a lot of preparation beforehand and they've interacted with us, and also to you, the attendees who have been part of this session and also asking the relevant questions. We thank you for that. So we hope to see you at a future event of the Bahrain Chamber and also handled by the Technology Committee. So Dr. Osama, thank you for your initiative and giving the opportunity to present this session. We look forward to having you, and have a good day, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.